G'day there, everybody. Welcome to the Builder's Office. Builder's Office is a podcast specifically for homeowners that are looking to get the best out of their project, whatever it may be. Collection of myself, a number of other people that I do actually know in the industry, and other professionals that I want to have a chat with that are going to be able to give you some of those insider secrets that may not necessarily be on offer anywhere else, and even speaking to other builders. So, my name's Hugh. Welcome to another episode. This is episode number 29. Wow, can't believe we're getting up there already, almost at 30. I'm really impressed, and I really want to thank everybody that has been listening, has been viewing, and getting the best that they can from the content, and also for some of your input as well. Some of your input has been amazing, especially from people on our social media pages, so especially off of Instagram. If you are looking around and you want to keep up to date and possibly even contribute, definitely jump on Instagram, because we're active on there and we try to get out as much content as we can on there as well. So, episode 29, what's the difference? And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about, in today's episode, is about the red flags. The red flags that come up with any kind of building project. And it's not limited to builders versus your owner builders or the size of the project or anything like that. But I wanted to give out a little bit of information, especially around what could be the red flags for builders and the different types of builders there are out there, and something that can help you make a better decision about what's going to suit you, your project, budgets, time constraints, everything like that. Because really, at the end of the day, a builder is going to be suited to you, and you're going to be suited to them as well. It's not a one-way street. So we really need to know, before we make that decision, what's going to be the best for us. And the best way to go about this is going to be getting advice from trusted sources. And it may not necessarily be going directly to a builder and speaking with them. But I'm not saying don't go to a builder. I am predominantly saying go and speak to different types of builders. Go and speak to ones that you may not necessarily, in any other ordinary case, have a chat with them. So let's go through a little bit of this, shall we? Let's deep dive into this right now. So this week I did throw out a number of questions, specifically relating to whether and what type of builders we thought, or people's opinions were not going to be around for much longer, or were going to shut down. Got some interesting responses back, ranging from volumes and the reasons why the volumes might be going out of business, down to custom home builders and very small one-off custom home builders. So very interesting to go through some of that. So I want to thank everybody for their input with this. This has just been absolutely sensational. But it's probably not going to be clear, because one person's opinion is obviously very different to another. And my opinion is definitely going to be different to probably most people out there. Whereas my opinion, I'm looking at the whole overarching dimension when it comes to building. So there's definitely merits to every type of builder out there. But today, just want to concentrate on some of those red flags. And going through that, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Let's just say that. So here I was thinking that my view or opinion will be spot on, but as with doing this podcast and with doing life, I'm willing to learn and willing to be humbled by the information that gets passed on to me. So definitely want to be very thankful of the people that have contributed, and I will be speaking to a few of them. I definitely want to speak to one in particular who just gave a lot of information, and he'll know who he is, and we'll definitely sit down and have a chat. So I'm looking forward to that one. things like what do we think is out there? Really interesting sort of thing to talk about. How many different types of builders people think are out there, whether they're limited with their options. We're going to go a little bit into that, but let's get into what kind of risks are associated with each type of builder. I think that was the biggest learning that sort of came from this week's stuff. So onto my notepad, getting through it, and I'll try to make this as quick as I possibly can because really we don't always want to be talking about all the bad stuff all the time. But surprisingly enough, there seems to be more people interested in the bad stuff right now than the good stuff. So start with the bad stuff and we can work into the good stuff and how we can possibly even avoid the bad stuff, if this would fold up nicely. All right, so let's start with the most common one that came up. And this, mind you, a lot of this was based from tradespeople's perspective, which don't have a problem with because at the end of the day, insider information, insider knowledge. I was a tradesperson myself. I was a carpenter, now a builder. You sort of get insider background, back of house stuff that we see with different types of builders, and I've had experience with most of them myself. But some of the things that came up in the last week with throwing this stuff out on social media gave it back to me and reminded me of all of these things that I had experienced with the different types of builders. So let's start at the top. All right, so right up the top, we have volume builders. And volume builders, I can go through my list, and my list, well, you can probably see it's not long, but lots of small writing, and it's just dot points. So I'll just start with this. So obviously, risks involved with a large market share of volume builders. So the large volume builders, like your ones that sit up the top, and they claim that they are the biggest builder in Australia. And biggest builder in Australia, well, okay, you have a large market share percentage wise versus the mums and dads and that sort of thing that are the other builders that are out there. And with that, they get a little bit of pull and that sort of thing. So it can be alluring from the perspective of that large market share that they have buying power, collateral, and all that sort of thing. Red flags are they have very small profit margins, and with small profit margins becomes a huge risk. If anything like what's happened in the last couple of years happens, we will see them disappear because the profit margins get eaten up, company starts losing money, they might not necessarily have the asset base to be able to back them up, and they end up going under, or they get bailed out by the government, which has happened in a couple of cases when we know that that's happened. So the drastic changes in material costs, and sometimes because of the large employee base that they have, they don't necessarily know the issue straight away because the communication between some of the people might not necessarily be great. The processes might not be able to work, and with new people constantly, like the high turnover rate of employees that we do know happens in these large companies, the processes might be getting missed. The training might not be getting done. That really needs to be there to ensure that the flow of information is getting between every single department, and of course the powers that be in those companies get the relevant information to make sure that the business does not go under and is going to be functional. Like we do know that there were a number of companies that were buying out contracts with clients because it was more feasible for them to buy a contract out and pay the client out of a contract than it was to actually finish the project because of the rising costs. So we know that happened. Another red flag is, and this purely from a trades perspective, is that the prices, the pay to trades for doing the work is generally a lot lower. And while they might sometimes be more organised, the issue is slow to pay. They screw the trades down on prices as much as possible because they simply have the work and they can go and get more people whenever they want. So they know that they can get the cheapest trades going around. Trade off with that, and this is one of the biggest red flags, is the quality of the work is really, really quite low. Because the trades that they get in, and not to diss trades, but generally it'll be inexperienced people that don't know what they don't know. And when it comes to the quality of the finish, that's where they let the ball sort of drop, and you end up with imploding of houses and maintenance issues afterwards, and houses not finished off to a really high quality standard. And you would have seen, if you're listening to this, more than likely you've seen a lot of the building inspectors going out there inspecting houses, and you start to see some of those defects turn up, and people going, "Oh, this is a defect," and you possibly even been on Facebook pages where they're naming and shaming the builders and the quality of the work that's sort of coming from that. So yeah, it's definitely there when it comes to that. So yeah, obviously the quality of the builds, and then maintenance afterwards. Like if the builds were going well and the quality of the work was going really well, then maintenance wouldn't be a red flag, because constant maintenance, and the volume builders, they all do it. They have a maintenance team and specific trades, and all they do is maintenance on the homes. Supervisors doing maintenance on the homes, because they know, because of the way that they're running, they're constantly doing maintenance. Now that maintenance could run on for many years after a build's been done, all the way through the warranty period, which is 7 to 10 years at the moment. So yeah, it's a worrying sign that these sorts of things happen. And this is some things that won't get told to you by these builders. So just letting you know that that's a red flag. So small to medium volume builders. So not your high up there doing over 2,000 builds a year. Somewhere between 100 and 1,500 homes a year are the small to medium volume builders. But these guys, they all still operate largely the same as the large volume builders, because it's the business model. They still try to mimic the volume builders and their business models, which, as we've seen, can be conducive to not operating well. So we've got to be, in the same vein, we've got to be really critical of the way that these guys operate as well. And while they aren't as large, they still operate on very similar margins. And the margins are really tight. And I've discussed it in a previous episode, where the margins were, if they're sitting at 5% or less, and a majority of the time they are operating at a much smaller profit margin as well, just to try and get by. And that's the business model. More homes, less profit margin, can do things for cheaper, but trade-off is quality, and anything goes wrong, profits go out the window, business goes bust, leaves people high and dry. So that's a risk. Now, they still have the same issues, and still have the same issues as the volume builders. And when it comes to some of those mistakes that do happen, it does come because they don't necessarily have the training, the training for the new employees or existing employees, and some of those procedures, systems, and that sort of thing might not be as refined as the volume builders, as the large volume builders, I should say. So there's still a lot of learning that these guys are doing. So there's a stark contrast between those guys, and we're talking about established guys as well, because we know that there are still, there's new and emerging volume builders. So we know that this thing's just continuing to happen. The quality is still poor, and the trades are still treated poorly as well. And because these companies are essentially run by accountants, I guess you could say, and they are having to make sure that the targets are met, the costs are being kept to an absolute minimum, and people are operating all in the same way. It's making it very challenging for them to actually make the money that's actually needed to be made, deliver quality as well. So the one of the things that comes from this is the client experience. And if you've done any building with a small, medium or large volume builder, or you've done any of their projects, you might have been a first homeowner and just bought into a place, bought a house off the plans, or a house and land package, then you start to see the client experience isn't necessarily always top of mind. And I know that there's a lot of guys that turn around and they scream and go, I just feel like a number. I don't feel like I'm listened to. And that's a big red flag. I mean, nobody that's spending that amount of money, and generally it's a life savings, to build a home or to do anything with a property, nobody wants to feel like they're just a number. And that's, once again, going back to being run by accountants, they're looking at the numbers. And the numbers, to them, don't lie. But the client experience, to me, that's a red flag. I don't know about you, but that's a big red flag. So once we get past the volume builders, we get down to your custom home builders. And there's two distinct categories of custom home builders in my view. So there's established ones and then there's new. And the established ones, some do, because they have basically lived the volume builder business model style of building from 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when it was in a time where it was conducive and it operated really well. Everything was stable, everything could work properly. Trades would be turning up, and that was the value of the work was adequate at the time. Obviously, times change, but because the established custom builders are still operating the same way that they were 20 years ago, sometimes they have not learnt some of the new ways to be able to manage in a newer economical climate, or newer economic climate, I should say. So once we move on from that, I mean, that's a big red flag, because they still try to operate like that, try to cut costs as much as they possibly can in certain areas, and sometimes that can affect the quality of the work. But because custom homes are not spec homes, sometimes the procedures and systems need to be a lot more refined, because at the end of the day, volume builders, they have plans and they have the specs and they have their system in place that deals with specific items, and anything out of the ordinary becomes a little bit of an issue, because then they've got to go and run through a whole different set of procedures to be able to get that to happen. And then sometimes it doesn't happen because it can be deemed as too hard because it doesn't fit in with their business model. Whereas custom home builders, they need these more refined systems and procedures to be able to deliver a product to you. So if you're asking for, you've been to an architect and you've gotten all of your specifications done, so you know exactly what cooktop you're going to have, you know exactly what tiles you're going to have, you know exactly what light fittings you're going to be putting in your home, right down to the toilet roll holder or the door stops on the back of the doors. You know exactly what they are. Now, if a custom builder doesn't have these procedures in place to be able to go through that entire list and specify every single thing, could end up with issues. And that's where large volume builders fall down, because sometimes it makes it too difficult for them to do it. So, red flag there is that if they don't have those procedures, you'll be able to know straight away, because you won't, when it comes to just the initial conversations with them and you're getting a proposal or an estimate done, then they might not necessarily specify the specific items for you that have been specified as part of your build specifications that have been provided to them to quote off of. So red sign is, if you don't see that, turn around and question it. If next thing when it comes to this is they can be poor with money management and small margins, because they still might be trying to operate like a volume builder. And I've seen it before where custom builders are sitting around and they're trying to just basically screw each trade down and say, oh, you need to do it cheaper, you need to do it cheaper. And because the poor money management comes into it, it's generally because they've lost money on a previous project or they miscalculated something because they didn't do their due diligence with their pricing. And of course, letting you know, which can also lead to variations, which is another big red flag. If they've got this many variations, and you should be able to find out from previous clients what the system worked like when it came to variations that they were sent. The money management can be a big issue, and this is where custom builders, like volume builders, if they're not on top of it, it'll show up in those things like the variations and trades not being paid, high turnover of trades. That is one of the things. High turnover of trades can be a worrying sign if there have been issues with payments, and we see that quite regularly. Now, new custom builders, so not the established guys, new custom builders, because they are new, they don't have systems. They don't have procedures. They operate on the fly the whole time. They're constantly chasing their tail. And it's just inexperience. That's really all it is. And while these can be really detrimental, those issues, most of the time it's because they are a one or two man band. And when it comes to that, if they are trying to bite off more than they can chew with too many projects, and this is one of the things, is they try to do too many projects all at once and they can't manage it. And what do we know? If you try to do too many things at once, sometimes you're just not capable of doing it because you don't have the systems, you don't have the processes to be able to make it work. And yeah, it starts to go pear-shaped very quickly, and too many projects exacerbate already bad procedures or bad systems. And that's where these guys really need to be paying attention. And hopefully, when you do speak to a smaller or a new custom builder, you can find out whether they actually have the systems and processes in place. You can ask them what their experience is like, and you can also go through and ask them, I'd like to speak to one of your trades or a couple of your different trades, a couple of your previous clients, and see what their experience was like. Definitely do your due diligence when it comes to that. Red flags, ask for evidence of what they've been up to, especially with custom builders. It's definitely worth it. Volume builders, you can go and do that with them as well. Definitely go and do it, because believe you me, if you're speaking to any builder's previous clients, they're going to be straight up and they're going to be honest with you. And I want them to be honest, and that same feedback, I love hearing that feedback come back to me as well. So definitely do that. So yeah, when it comes to this, then it starts filtering down into the smaller stuff. So most builders start with all these problems. They don't realize that they're problems because they don't know what they don't know. So go through it. Once you get past the small teams, the poor contract management, mistakes, delays, variations, and that's the biggest, scariest one, is the red flags when it comes to variations down the line. So we start getting through it, and it starts to get a little bit tricky. So now that I've gone through a lot of that, I hope that there's been some eye-opening bits of information in there, and the values there for you guys to be able to at least make a more informed decision. So next week, in the next episode, I am going to go through the green flags. And really, the green flags to me, they're going to stand out, and it's really going to start to show you where is a good way to go with your build, what direction is going to suit you best. Because at the end of the day, you need to do something that's going to suit you. And if you can do something that's going to suit you, you're going to get the end result that you really want. Mind you, speaking to builders can be a daunting task and can make you question what you're going to do a lot. And that's where a lot of people go down the road of owner builder. Now, owner building, it has its red flags as well. It just comes down to what you're willing to work with to make your project happen. So I want to thank you for listening today. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought, and this sort of thing happens every now and then. So I wanted to thank you for joining today. A little bit of a interesting topic to go through, but next week I'm looking forward to the other half of it, to be able to bring you more information on the green flags. And if you could, please like, share, all the fun stuff when it comes to this. Want this podcast to go out to as many people as you possibly can. Follow, definitely share it. If you think that there's somebody that can get some value from this, share it off to them, and we'd also love to talk to them. Because at the end of the day, we want to be able to bring you as much good advice as possible to make sure that you're going to get the best out of your building projects. So my name's Hugh, this is the Builder's Office. Every Saturday, 12 o'clock, you'll be able to get another really punchy episode on what's happening out there in the building industry from an insider, I guess you could say. But I want to thank you again. Thanks for listening, and I will speak to you next week. See you later, guys.